Hi, my name is Piwo, and this is a behavior management video for parents. All behavior serves a function. In ABA, the function of a problem behavior must be identified in order to select the appropriate behavior intervention strategies. Once we can identify why a behavior is happening, we can then put into place a plan to manage the behavior. In this video, we're going to talk about what is behavior, the functions of behavior, what is extinction, replacement behaviors, and we are going to talk about punishment and the ethics surrounding punishments. Let's talk about behavior. What is behavior? Behavior is what an individual does or says. We have to understand that behavior also impacts the environment. This can be public and private behavior. Public behavior is actions we can see with the naked eye, such as screaming, sucking on your thumb, scribbling on a piece of paper. Behavior can also be private, which is behavior that only the individual can observe within themselves, such as thinking in your mind about what you have to do, such as having an urge to scream but not actually screaming. These events cannot be seen by anyone. In this training, we are going to focus on public behavior. I'm going to give you an example of both. For example, if we talk about, an individual is very nervous, that would be an example of private behavior because we cannot see it. A classification of what would be public behavior would be us describing it fully, such as saying, John is very nervous, and we can see this through him pacing the room back and forth, rubbing his hands, and breathing rapidly. Now, let's talk about functions of behavior. There are 4 functions of behavior. In these 4 functions of behavior, I'll be using an example of a young girl called Sally, who's 8 years old and lives with her mom and her dad and her sister. The first function of behavior is attention. Attention would mean that the individual, Sally, behaves in a certain way in order to get attention from her parents, teachers, or friends, such as shouting for a toy that is on top of the fridge. Function number 2 would be escape. In an escape function, the individual, Sally, would try to disengage in expected tasks that are asked from parents, teachers, and peers. This can be escape from a task, from an uncomfortable setting, from social attention from adults or peers, or escaping pain or discomfort, such as Sally being asked to pick up her toys and running to hide in her sister's room instead. Function number 3 would be access. This would consist of the individual behaving in a certain way in order to obtain tangible items or activities. Tangible items can be things such as toys, iPads. Activities could be playtime with friends, going to the movies, anything that might be exciting for an individual. For example, Sally finishes her homework before 7 p.m. so that she is able to play on her iPad before she goes to sleep. The 4th function is automatic reinforcement or sensory stimulation. These are actions that are enjoyable to a person and are not controlled by who is in the environment and what is in the environment. Instead, these are actions that stimulate the 5 senses. It can be visionary, auditory, kinesthetic. For example, rolling your tongue in your mouth, flicking, picking your nails, flicking your fingers. Now, let's talk about extinction. But before we talk about extinction, we have to talk about reinforcement. A behavior is an action that is followed by a consequence, just like in the natural world. A consequence is what happens after a behavior, which will influence whether the behavior will take place again. The consequences of a behavior will either increase or decrease the likelihood of the behavior occurring when the individual is in similar situations in the future with either the same people or different people. For example, Sally cleans her toys and is praised by her parents. From this, Sally sees that it is an appropriate behavior, and this increases the chances of her cleaning her room for more praise and other rewards in the future. So the process of implementing responses that result in an increase in behavior is known as reinforcement. Extinction is when a response that was usually reinforced is no longer reinforced. For example, Sally cleans her room, but her parents do not deliver praise, nor do they notice what she does, or if they do notice, they do not say anything. So extinction is responses being eliminated, which can lead to certain emotions such as anger and frustration, or either an increase in previously reinforced behavior. Now let's talk about replacement behaviors. Replacement behaviors are positive, appropriate behaviors that can be encouraged and that can be taught, and that can lead to a decrease in problem behaviors. This can consist of skills such as being able to ask for help using visual cues, being able to ask for help or attention using certain statements, being taught how to wait to get attention, being able to ask in order to receive attention from either a teacher, peers, or parents. For example, at school, if Sally cries when she cannot complete a task independently, which usually leads to the teacher making her stop the task and not have to finish the task, which would be an escape function. In this case, she can be taught how to ask for help from the teacher, or be taught how to ask for a break using cue cards. Okay, these are behaviors that can be encouraged instead of engaging in behavior that might be disruptive. Now let's talk about punishment. When we talk about punishment, this does not mean it is not seen as a harmful action that is inflicted on an individual. Instead, the focus is on consequences that can help to decrease behavior when individual has choices to choose from. Punishment is the process of introducing consequences that decrease the likelihood of a behavior occurring again in the future. In reinforcement, we talked about the same thing, but in reinforcement, it's about increasing the chances that the behavior will take place. In punishment, it's the opposite. It's decreasing the likelihood of a behavior occurring again. When we look at the example with Sally and her being asked to clean her toys, should she decide to not follow through on the request, her parents could take away her toys for a week. This would be a consequence to make sure that not cleaning does not take place again in the future. Other typical examples of punishment which exist would be timeouts, removal of privileges, and losing of point system in classrooms or at home. There are two types of punishment: positive punishment and negative punishment. Regardless of the fact that it's called a positive punishment, it's still there to make sure for decreasing. So let's talk about the difference. Positive punishments add a consequence that was not there before the punishing behavior occurred, such as walking to the fridge, picking up a bottle of milk, drinking it, and realizing that it is spoiled. The spoiled milk tasting was not there before the behavior occurred. Positive punishments are usually naturally occurring in nature and do not need to be set up. A negative punishment revolves around removal, reduction of a reinforcer, and it would be more of a penalty for a behavior, such as taking away a toy from Sally, as previously discussed. As I previously said, punishment is not something that is harmful or is to inflict on the individual. Instead, it focuses on the consequence of a behavior. There are many ethics that surround punishment and how it should be used. Before punishment is used, certain questions need to be answered. The first question that needs to be answered is, what is the behavior? Is the behavior harmful to the individual, and others around them? We also need to look. If you are going to put a punishment into place, such as a timeout, is the punishment likely to have, what effect will it have in the future? Would it be better to not input a timeout and rather use another form of reinforcement? Secondly, we need to look at finding an alternative before deciding to punish, such as teaching a replacement behavior. We also need to look at what has been tried before. Such an example of Sally needing to take breaks. Has that been something that has been tried? Has it worked? If it has not worked, why has it not worked? How long was it tried for? Who was involved in the process? How could it have been made better? So there needs to be a lot of questions that are followed up before we decide to punish. Thirdly, once punishment is used, it needs to be used carefully, and it needs to be used consistently for better learning. It can't be something that is used on one day and in another day it's not used in one day and another day it is not used, as that will not change behavior in any form. We also need to punish according to the action and not based on feelings and not based on what you feel like doing on that day. Punishment needs to be not too drastic. It also needs to be not too little so that there is a chance that behavior is actually decreased. Thank you for listening.